This little 2-week series leading up to home team kickoff we've called In the Room. And we talked about last week the story of doubting Thomas, how he was not in the room and he had doubts. And he came in the room, and it wasn't just that he was there with his friends, that he made it into the room to be with the other disciples. It was that when he was with the people of God, the Word of God, Jesus Christ showed up. And it made all the difference. And it wasn't that he had to get rid of his doubts before he came. It was that he was supposed to come and he was supposed to bring his doubts in the room. Jesus wants you to bring your doubts. When you get to the end of your doubts, then you begin to really grow. That God is not afraid of my lack of trust. We'll never convince him not to trust him. And so today, we're working forward a little bit in the scriptures. This is after Jesus has already given his life on the cross, has been resurrected from the tomb, and has ascended to the right hand of the Father. And the Spirit of God has come, and the church was born in Acts chapter 2 on the day of Pentecost. And the Holy Spirit filled the 120 in the upper room, and they all prophesied, and they gave messages in different tongues, and it was translated, and the people heard the word of God. And it said there in Acts chapter 2 that 3,000 souls were baptized in one day. What a sermon, what a day in the history of the church. It's the birthday of the church. And the people began to go out and convince everyone that this Jesus Christ was really real. And many times people will bring up political arguments to their theological problems. And what happened was the people who had the power, had the political and religious power, didn't like the fact that the people were getting their own power from God. That they no longer needed to be told what to do, how to think, and they weren't no longer dependent on every word that fell from the religious leader's mouth. That they began to have access to God himself, and it was the new day. It's the New Testament. This is the New Testament, the new covenant, that you yourself are a priest unto God, that you hear from God, you act from God, and that can be very dangerous to religious political structures in the world. And so they began to persecute the church, and they began to put the leaders of the church in jail. Many years ago, I was in China. We were doing some mission work, and nobody was supposed to know that we were there. And we met with many leaders of the underground church. And what we found out was this, that the Chinese government, on purpose, always went to jail just the leaders of the church. If anyone was a pastor or a bishop or any type of house church leader, they would always go after to jail those first. And what was amazing was this, is it was difficult, but that persecution always grew to make the church stronger. Stronger, stronger, stronger. Before Christianity was legalized in the Roman Empire, they would say this, that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. That is the blood of the martyrs that gives life and gives new life to the church, new seeds. And we found out in China that in any other country where religion is persecuted, that every time a leader was taken out and jailed, that new leaders would spring up. And then anytime those leaders were taken out and jailed, new leaders would spring up. As if they could try to decapitate the church. When we know our Bible says that Jesus Christ is the head of the church. There's no decapitation strike that could happen on the church of Jesus Christ. And even then, in this day, that was the very first thing that the religious officials and the Roman government working together would do. And they put the leaders of that new, powerful, spirit-filled church behind bars. So I thought about calling this sermon, from the jail to the Bible study. But this message is called When God Brings You In. When God brings you in. And so in this passage, we're going to start in Acts chapter 12, verse 1. It says, and now about that time, Herod the king laid hands on some who belonged to the church in order to mistreat them or persecute them. And he had James, the brother of John, James and John. The Bible called them the sons of thunder, or they were known as the sons of their father Zebedee. They were the first two fishermen that Jesus Christ recruited there on the shore of Galilee, Lake Galilee. And it says they dropped their nets and followed him. And in verse 3 it says, and when Herod saw that it pleased the Jews, this is a political leader leading by looking behind him and seeing who's following. You know what you call a leader with no followers? Just a man taking a walk. And so Herod would look, and he was letting the tail wag the dog. And that's the way he led. He led in reverse. And when he saw that it pleased the Jews, he proceeded to arrest Peter also. Oh, they like me arresting James. James was a cool, calm, and collected leader who had strategic plans and directions. And then he said, if you like that, then you'll really like me arresting Peter, because Peter was the one who preached that sermon on the day of Pentecost where 3,000 were baptized. He was the figurehead. And he arrested Peter. It says, now it was during the days of Unleavened Bread. It was one of the Jews' feasts. They had 12 feasts in the course of a year. And it says, when they had seized him, they put him into prison, delivering him to 4 squads of soldiers to guard him. All rotating, taking 6-hour shift was their way of guarding. And they would have the prisoner chained to 2 guards, and those guards would rotate 6 hours so that no one would get too tired to watch the prisoners. And so, intending after the Passover to bring him out before the people. It was so that he could bring him out just at the right time where everyone was in the city. And this was also the time after the Passover where Jesus Christ himself was raised up on the cross, when all the people from all over had gathered in the city. In verse 5 it says, so Peter was kept in prison, and here's the critical words, but prayer for him was being made fervently by the church of God. But prayer for him was being made fervently by the church of God. I have found, as I talk to other pastors and other people, especially as people get older in years, there is one critical factor that makes the difference. There's no factor that makes a bigger difference than this difference in someone's life. When you meet someone, and this person really seems to be an overcomer, no matter what gets thrown at them, they become overcomers. They don't stay down long. There's someone who has hurts, has habits, has hang-ups, but they don't give up in the middle of their hang-up. People who tend to be someone who other people listen to, especially about the things of God. There's one critical factor we have seen over and over and over again, and this is it. This is it. That they were prayed for. I've learned to start asking this question. When I come across someone that just seems to stand out, either by what they've overcome in their life, or by when they speak, they're just dead on about something, or it just seems as though God is with them. It's not about, I've noticed it's not about their education or about their church background. What I ask them is this. Let me ask you a question. is there someone specific in your life that you know for sure has always prayed for you? And they, without fail, answer yes. We had a youth pastor years ago. In fact, he visited our church. He was living over here near Blackman Middle School. And neighborhood Stone something over there. I forgot the name. And so he showed up at the church in the movie theater. And he came in, and I had known him from years before, but just barely. And he had gotten an advertisement about our church in the mail. And he was divorced from his wife, but living with his wife and the children. Now, if you know anything about families, that is a difficult place to know what to do next from. That's a tough place to know what to do next from. And Chuck came in the church that day, and I visited with him about a week later, and Chuck says this to me. Chuck says, now, you know I went to church as a kid, but I'll probably come back, but I don't want to get all involved or anything. I don't want to get all involved or anything. And Chuck was really in his own private prison. And then one night, God allowed Chuck to have the realm of reality just peeled back. In the middle of the night one night, he could see, sense, and physically feel the demonic war going on over his life and his soul. And he literally felt a pressure on his chest that night. And he got up and he said the words and prayed the prayer that he had heard his mother pray for him. And he held his hands in the air and he said, I don't know what's got a hold of me, but in the name and by the blood of Jesus Christ, let me go. At that moment, he said everything lifted off of him. It was like the whole room changed and everything was bright and light around him. That was a Saturday night. He showed up back to church Sunday morning. He grew spiritually faster than anyone I had ever seen up to that point grow spiritually. About a year and a half later, before we ever had a church building, I stood with him and his wife-to-be, who was his divorced wife then, and we stood down here in this in Schaumburg Road Baptist Church that we borrowed for the night, and his 10-year-old son, and we performed a remarriage ceremony for them, and his 10-year-old son cried through the whole entire service. I don't lose it at weddings and funerals. I've just been in front of people most of my life. I don't lose it. It's just kind of like it's part of the game. I barely made it through that ceremony. I barely made it through. Me and Landon were crying. Everybody was crying. And I think about that, and Chuck would always say this in his testimony later on. He would say this. He would say, after he became our youth pastor, our first full-time youth pastor, and youth group had grown, and many kids' lives were totally transformed in that passage of time. In fact, Crystal Bryan, Mike's wife, was one of the first kids in that youth ministry, and now she's our preschool director here. And so he would say this. Would say, my mother has scars and blood and calluses on her knees from praying for me. It is a big difference in life. And I find that we are tempted with our spouses, with our friends, with our bosses, with our neighbors, to do a lot more talking to them about God than we do talking to God about them. We're tempted to do a lot more talking to them about God than we talk to God about them. And they were doing a lot of talking to God about Peter. Let me show you what God did to bring Peter in. It says, "And the very night when Herod was about to bring him forward means kill him. Peter was sleeping between two soldiers, chained here, bound with two chains." The other day I saw somebody post on Facebook that they had been to some kind of concert and had worn big chains. The name of the guy was 2 Chains. I don't know what 2 Chains is, but maybe he got his name from this passage. You think so? You don't think so, Alicia? You don't think so? I don't know what it is. Hannah, you don't think so? Do you know what that is, Hannah? I don't know what it is, but I saw somebody went to a big concert, had big chains on. I don't know if all their friends were wearing chains, but anyway, he was bound with 2 chains. And guards in front of the door were watching over the prison. And behold, an angel of the Lord suddenly appeared, and light shone in the cell. And he struck Peter's side and roused him, saying, "Get up quickly." And his chains fell off his hands. And the angel said to him, "Gird yourself and put on your sandals." And he did so. And he said to him, "Wrap your cloak around you and follow me." And he went out and continued to follow. And he did not know that what was being done by the angel was real, but thought he was seeing a vision. And when they passed, and the first and second guard, they came to the iron gate that leads into the city, which opened for them by itself. And they went out and went along one street, and immediately the angel departed from him. Now let me break this down for us, because I think I need to break it down for us, because if we either spoke the King's English or if we read this in the Greek vernacular, we would not have made it through these sentences without our jaw being dropped or being rolling on the floor laughing for something. Because in the Bible, sometimes God allows us to capture the things that are just like us, that seem like, how could you be that stupid? Oh my goodness, that's weird. And it's weird right here, but it gets even weirder. Because it wasn't 2 nights before he would have been beheaded. It wasn't a week before. It was the very night before. God doesn't always come when you're wanting to, but he comes when? Right on time. It was the last moment before. Now, and it gets even funnier. It says Peter was sleeping. There was no, Peter, Simon, would you like a pack of cigarettes before you stand up and you're shot with a sword? I don't know what they shot him with, but hung or whatever it was. There was no, what would you like for your last meal, Peter? There was no, let's call in, some kind of a religious person to pray with you, because we would have called you to pray with you. Since you're here, we can't call you to pray with you since you're here. And we can't call your friends to pray with you, because we would just put them in prison with you. So I'm sure they wouldn't come. So he was there by himself. And what did he do? He went to sleep. Raise your hand if you could sleep the night before they were going to murder you. It kind of calls me back to the time where Jesus was in the boat on the Sea of Galilee. There was a horrible, horrible storm. And it says in the Gospels that Jesus was in the back of the boat sleeping on the sun deck in the back, the nice sun deck in the back with all the big cushions, right over the motor, the cover on top of the motor, and that nice sun deck with the nice ski platform in the back. It does say he was sleeping on a cushion, though. So they knew where to put the cushion. Jesus was sleeping in the back on a cushion. And it says the storm was so bad they were sure they're going to die. And so they went and they woke up Jesus and said, don't you care? Don't you care? If you woke up Peter that moment, he would say, don't wake me up. I need some rest before they kill me. I preached a sermon about that one time, about the passage in Galilee. I should preach it again sometime. It's called, Don't Wake Up Jesus. Can you have enough faith in your life? Because Jesus stood up, he woke up, and he said, why are you waking me up? He said, don't wake me up. He said, you woke me up. He said, you of little faith. You have so little faith, you wake me up to deal with a storm. And so he says, peace, be still to the storm. I think Peter was finally starting to learn something. Peter went to school on Jesus in the storm. It was the night before, and he thinks, I remember Jesus sleeping through what I thought was going to kill me. And so now they told me they're going to kill me, so I'll just sleep. And he says, and he goes up and he says, and the angel has to strike him on the side. Wake up. And he says, struck him on the side. It wasn't like little striking. It wasn't like, hey, Peter, wake up. There was no snooze button on the angel. And so he says, get up. And his 2 chains fell off. And the guards were asleep. It says, the angel says to him, gird yourself, put on your sandals, pull up your jeans and put on your flip-flops. This is a jailbreak. Pull up your jeans and put on your flip-flops. This is a jailbreak. And he says, now, get your shirt, Peter. We don't want to see all that. Get your shirt. Follow me. And then Peter the whole time thinks it's a vision or a dream or something. Like, did I wake up? Did I not wake up? I mean, like, if you're sleeping the night before they kill you, you might dream of the angel coming and rescuing you. I mean, there was no one to say, pinch me, to. And here's where I want to land just on this little section here. He says, and he got to the gate of the prison that opens up to the city street. I mean, like, archway, gate, bars, giant 2 chains. And then he had to pass by one set of guards that were knocked out. I mean, the 2 guards were knocked out on his 2 chains. And then he had to pass by another set of guards, another set of guards, then the bars, then out to the street. And he gets up there and it says, like, super freaky. I mean, really super freaky. He gets up there and the gate goes. You want to hear that again, James? Okay. Chris, I practiced that for a long time. Not one more time. I know. I don't know what he said. I don't want to know. But that it opened for them by itself. Here's what we do in life. We're trying to get out of the mess we're in. And we don't go through the doors God opens. We'll say, I don't know which way to go. I don't know what church to go to. I don't know which friends to have. And we're as though we're someone who's asleep and won't wake up. Because God very, 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 very often puts things in front of you that happen all by themselves. And if you're anything like me, I don't want the things that happen all by themselves. That's not the things I was thinking about. I don't want the things that happen all by themselves. I want to work for it. I don't want the things that happen all by themselves. That's not God. I don't want the things that happen all by itself. What is it in your life right now that's happening all by itself? Could you entertain the option that that's God at work? Yeah, but I didn't do anything. It's called grace. The person who comes up to you extremely irritatingly and offers you advice happened all by itself. Right? The person that comes and invites you to something and you don't like that person very much. You know who I'm talking about, right? You're thinking about him right now, aren't you? It happened all by itself. You didn't invite that. You have no idea that will be the most loyal friend you've ever had in your entire life, because the friends you've been picking in the past have been stinkers. Right? Somebody walks right out of your life. Happened all by itself. You try to keep them. Or you try to cuss them. Happened all by itself. There's such power in this one thing. Like it says of one of the Old Testament kings, Jehoshaphat. It says, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Peter could have hired a lawyer. He could have banged on the gates. He could have used that cup, like Ernest T. Bass and Andy Griffith. Anybody know who Ernest T. Bass and Andy Griffith is? It's Ernest, and who's the other guy? Otis the drunk. He could have been like those guys and had his little cup, and. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. You know why we don't do it? Because we have this thought that plagues us. What if it doesn't come? What if he doesn't come? Because that thought that says, what if it doesn't come, is the same thought as this. What if he doesn't care? What if he doesn't come is the same as what if he doesn't care? Don't I have to do something? You can do something if there's something to do, but if there was something to do, you would have already done it by now. I love the book of Ephesians. It talks about prayer and the armor of spiritual armor. And after it talks about putting all the armor of God on, then it says, and stand. And stand. Stand, then it says stand, and then it says the word stand again. And stand therefore. And what does it say to do next? Pray. Ephesians chapter 6. Write it down. Go back and research it this week. All the armor of God. Happened all by itself. Verse 11. It says, and when Peter came to himself, after the angel had departed from him, can you see that? Can you see him there? It's like little cobblestone streets. That's what I think it's probably was. Little cobblestone streets with some mud puddles. A horse walks by, clup, clop, clip, clop, clip, clop. He's there on the side of the street and he's all alone. The late night bell tolls. And he realizes, here I am. I'm out here. I'm out of jail. And what's crazy is he has to think, what do I do next? Well, I'm glad he did think about what do I do next. Like, how many people here would have gotten out of town? I mean, like, let me get out of town. Let me go hide at my great step-grandmother-in-law's house. They'll never find me there. He came to himself and said, now I know for sure that the Lord sent forth his angel and rescued me from the hand of Herod and from all those Jewish people and what they were expecting. So funny because in the Bible very often, when the angel shows up to rescue or give the message, the people are afraid and they don't want it to happen and they don't want to hear what the angel has to say. How many angels in my life has God sent to me and I've not wanted what they said to happen and I have wanted to turn them away? And have I been afraid by what they've tried to give me? It's so amazing because if I start to think like, the reason I don't like it is because it wouldn't be what I would have figured out. But if it was what I would have figured out would work, then I would have done it already and it would have worked and I wouldn't be here. So obviously I need to do something that I do not like to get someplace that I do like. I've got to listen to someone that scares me in order to get someplace that comforts me. In verse 12 it says, and when he realized this, he thought to himself, it's Tuesday night. I'm going to the steward's house for Bible study. I'm going to Laura's house. I remember they made me feel so welcome. Like that's my people. That's my people. He didn't go to his mama's house. He didn't go to his sister's house. He didn't go to his great step-grandmother-in-law's house to hide out. He didn't go over and get on a boat and get out of town like Jonah. He went to home team. He went to his Bible study. He went to the people who he knew must have been praying for him. We used to sing this old song years ago. Somebody's praying, I can feel it. You don't know that one, Matt? Somebody's praying for, you got to do this, me. He thought to himself, I want to go where the truth is. He thought to himself, it's Wednesday night. They're having prayer meeting. It's the night before the Sunday morning fallback service. It's Cross Sunday. I'm going. Because when you get set free, when you truly get set free, nobody can keep you away. You know where to go, and they can't even keep you away. See, the reason why people are kept away, and you can know this, like I believe this is true 100% of the time. The people who desire greatly to be in Bible studies or in fellowship groups, home teams, other places where God's being served and talked about, the reason they are not there very often is because they're in some kind of prison. There's some kind of prison holding us back. He went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, who was also called Mark, where there were many gathered together there and were praying. Now, if you thought the angel sequence was funny, this is where it gets, this is sitcom funny right here. It's even, the lady is even named just like one of the old sitcoms from when I was a kid, Rhoda. Verse 13. And when he knocked at the door of the gate, the servant girl named Rhoda came to answer. And she recognized Peter's voice because she's been hearing him preach forever. You know, like you turn to the radio, like, could you, any of you radio preacher listeners, could you miss Charles Stanley's voice at the door? Right there, you know. Could you miss David Jeremiah's voice at the door? You know. We heard Charles Stanley was put in prison, but I hear him at the door. And Rhoda's right there, and so it says when she recognized Peter's voice, because of her joy, her excitement, little 13-year-old Rhoda, servant girl, heard him. She got so excited. Now, when it says the gate, see, these houses were like usually 2 stories, and they had like courtyard gates around them, and you had to go off the city street into the gate, and then there was this middle section, and then the house went around, and the house went above you. And so Rhoda, they were far away from where the action was happening, where the people were praying. And so they're praying, God, let Peter out of prison. They killed James. God, don't let him get Peter. And Rhoda's down there at the door, and Rhoda hears Peter's voice, and she screams and runs. And she runs upstairs and says, it's Peter. Peter's at the door. Peter's at the door. And look what they say to her. They say, she didn't even open the gate, leaves him standing there. They said to her, you're out of your mind. But she kept insisting it was so, and they said, it's his angel. Later on he said, it's not my angel, it's me. It was my angel a little while ago, but he disappeared. I can try to find him for you if you want. And so he's right there. But this is funny. In verse 13, she did not open the gate. I don't know if I might not have started just like, I'm doing me some Apostle Peter cussing at the door, like, Rhoda! Rhoda! Come back, Rhoda! Or maybe like, you know how some of us are, like this. They didn't want me. They didn't want me. Here I am, I do all this to get here, they don't want me. A lot of times that's what people think when they go into something of the Lord. I'm encouraging people to take that next step with God, and they wouldn't want me. So many people have told me, and I remember it myself, coming to a group where I know I need to be. It's a safe place, it's a biblical place, it's a spirit-filled place. That knock on the door is kind of tough, isn't it? From out of the room to in the room is tough. It's like walking into the gym. Those first few steps are tough. But if you ever get into the gym, good things happen. You know? Or that morning you wake up and you do not want to go to school. You do not want to go to work. But if you get into work, good things happen. Like they don't fire you. Good things happen. Your worst enemy in that moment is you. No one can lie to you like you can. And no one can believe your lies like you can. He's at the door. Can you just see it? It's like, Peter's standing there and he's like, Rhoda runs back and Peter's like, da, da, da. He has to think, out of jail, chains, 2 sets of guards, doors opens all by itself. It happens to be Tuesday night. I'm at Laura's house. Christy came to the door. She screamed and she ran off. I'm here in the carport. Steve really ought to cut the grass, I guess. I don't know. I sure am glad little 13-year-old girls can be irritating and shriek when they want to be. Because here comes Rhoda again. It says, but in verse 16, but Peter continued knocking. I hear you knocking, but you can't come in. And when they had opened the door, they saw him and they were amazed. But motioning to them with his hands to be silent, they were screaming and, it's Peter, it's Peter. No, it's his angel. No, that's Peter. It's not my angel, it's me. And so, but motioning them to be silent, maybe he was into music and he went like this. Maybe he was doing this. This is what you're doing. This is what I want you to do. Cierra la boca. He described to them how the Lord had led him out of prison. And he said, report these things to James and the brethren. And he departed and went to another small group to tell them the story too. To another place, it says. This last Wednesday night, in the small group I'm a part of, we meet here. And I've been a part of lots of different ones over the years. And this last Wednesday night, we had somebody new in our team. And those of us who were there know who it was. What happens in home team stays in home team. It's like Las Vegas. And so we had somebody new, been wanting to come for a long time, and gotten his work schedule rearranged. I can't come because of work. He worked for about a year to get his work schedule changed. He was there. And just like Peter, he described some prisons and some prisons of lies and difficulties he had been in that has kept him feeling far away from God. It was powerful. It's powerful. The whole point of it, to get in the room, is when you're in the room, you discover what you've been set free from. And if you don't know you've been set free from it, or you don't know you can be set free, see, the point of truth is not to know truth. The point of truth is to be set free. We live in a religious culture where it's like, I know more than you. I learn more than you. I know the chapter and verse on that one. Yeah, but you're bound up with chains all around you. You got 5 chains, 2 chains. You got 2 chains times 12. The point of getting in the room is just like getting in the gym, like getting to your desk, is that you have this flesh all around you that wants everything else but the truth. But when you get in the room, the truth gets you. And when you know the truth, you can be set free. And it was amazing Wednesday night to hear somebody talk through, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. And I guess I really am free of that. I guess I really am free of that. And I've had the privilege through the years to watch so many people, and you have too. And some of those people have been me, and some of those people have been you. To watch them unfold their story and get more free. Unfold their story. When they see their story colliding with God's story, the chains fall off. When they see their story come together with God's story, they go from the jail to the Bible study. Now, some people I know have literally gone from jail to the Bible study. But many people are in jail while they're walking around. And it says in verse 16, but Peter continued knocking. Verse 17, he described to them how the Lord had led him out of prison. And he said, report these things to the other brethren and to James. And then you know who else has been knocking? Who wants to get into the room? As you guys stand with us as we close today. You know, see, these rooms can be made anywhere. I mean, we have dates and times and places for rooms, but, you know, Jesus says it like this, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, behold, I am in their midst. You are a portable sanctuary of God's glory.
Yeah.
And like when I get close to you, you're in my room. You get close to me, I'm in yours. But it only becomes a room for God if God's being let in. And you fast forward all the way into the book of Revelation. John, whose brother, James, for some unknown reason, in the divine mystery, God allowed him to be killed by Herod and released Peter. And so later in the book of Revelation, brother John writes these words that he hears directly from the voice of Jesus Christ. He says, tell the church of Laodicea this, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice, if Rhoda hears my voice, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If the people in the Bible study hear my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and dine with him and he with me. In the first century, like today, eating with someone is the sign of trust and a sign of deep fellowship. And so today, God is at work in your lives. And so, what prayer would you have today? Because just because there's some chains fell off does not mean that there might be some more chains. And so the chains have to come off in order to get in the room. You may still come into the room dragging one chain behind you. But God is saying to you today, however you get there, get there. Because the primary person that needs to be in the room is Jesus Christ. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice, I will open the door. Do you hear his voice today? Because he might be in the room of you driving the speed limit, but he might not be in the room of your inner lustful thoughts. He might be in the room of you quit smoking, but he might not be in the room of you started loving, which is a lot more important sometimes. He might be in the room of forgiving your friend, but he might not be in the room of forgiving your mother. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. He might be in the room of salvation and baptism, but he might not be in the room of your marriage or your singleness or your in-betweenness or your it's complicatedness. Will you let him in that room? And will you let him in the room that says, I come into the environment of worship and I believe, but I take that next step into a team of believers and I belong. I belong. I belong. Bow your head with me and close your eyes. And lift up your hands before the Lord. And Jennifer's going to lead us in this song. Let's just worship for a moment and ask the Lord Jesus what room he wants in. He's standing at that door and knocking today. I want you to imagine a door in front of you right now. And put a name card on that door like it was an office. What's the name of that room today? I can't tell you what yours are, but I know what mine is. You say, I got so many rooms that I want Jesus to be in. Which one today would you just call out and say, that's the one? Jesus, come into that one. Take over that room. And I won't be held back from the rooms where truth is and where God's people are, because you have come into the room that's holding me back from being in the room where you're sending me. I want to be set free in the room that's holding me back so I can be in the room you're sending me, God. The room of leadership, the room of love, the room of fellowship, the room of prayer, the room of knowledge, the room of spiritual growth, the room of God's church. Jesus, come into this room of my pain. Jesus, come into this room of my deepest fears and my secrets. I'm only as sick as my secrets, and so I don't want to be sick anymore. I've got to be humble to be healed. I've got to be revealed to be released. And maybe you want to come to these altars today and just to pray. And to say, God, let's pick the lock so Jesus can come in. Would you come today to the altar?